Good morning. We're going to get started this morning with an invocation from Pastor Kevin Clements of SSM Health, Oklahoma, and that will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Boston Holman and Nora Labus, representing Girl Scout Troop 6790. Please stand as you are able.
Let us pray. Good and gracious God, we thank you for this great city. And we pray once again for healing and peace for those in our city whose lives were forever changed 29 years ago, this past Friday. Pray for these leaders this morning as they've gathered and as they make decisions that affect many, many folks. We pray your guidance to them, your wisdom, your knowledge, your courage. Help them to listen when they need to listen and speak when they need to speak and act when they need to act. May your blessings continue to be upon Oklahoma City, these leaders, and all who reside therein. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor, and thank you, Boston and Nora. All right, I call this meeting of the City Council to order, and I have a couple presentations from Office of the Mayor that I'll do from the front. Okay, how about our friends from the Festival of the Arts? A little different routine this year.
Yes.
We're not heading right out in a couple hours to kick this thing off. We've got a little bit of a breather between this presentation and your big event, but as always, we want to honor you here at the council meeting of Festival of the Arts. And so we'd like to be reminded a little bit about what we love. And so I would ask the clerk to read this proclamation.
Whereas the 58th Annual Festival of the Arts, produced by Arts Council Oklahoma City, will officially open on Thursday, April 25th, 2024. And whereas the 58th Annual Festival of the Arts features 4 days of sensational visual, culinary, and performing arts. And whereas Festival of the Arts is recognized nationally as one of the most spectacular fine arts festivals in America. And whereas Festival of the Arts features more than 160 visual artists, live entertainment on 2 stages, and delicious local food and activities for all ages. And whereas 2024 Festival of the Arts co-chairs Jody McAnally and Pat Lewis lead a team of more than 30 committees and 4,000 volunteers who donate their time and talents to produce the Festival of the Arts. And whereas Festival of the Arts hosts more than 550,000 people each year, yielding a local economic impact of $25 million. And whereas Festival of the Arts is Oklahoma City's annual rite of spring and focuses on Arts Council Oklahoma City's mission to bring the arts and the community together. Now, therefore, I, David Holt, Mayor of the City of Oklahoma City, do hereby proclaim April 23rd, 2024 to be Festival of the Arts Day in Oklahoma City.
Thank you. Well, we do have some representatives from the Arts Council here this morning, including the aforementioned co-chairs, Jody and Pat. And we're excited for this, and we're very grateful for your service. We know that you are volunteers, and you put a lot of work in. And as was stated, so too do many thousands of others. Wow, that sounds like a lot. 4,000. Well, thank you again, and we would love to hear a few words from you, Pat Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. And yes, we do not start until Thursday. We've cut it down from 6 days to 4. but we'd still like to see your bright, smiling faces out there, council as well, at 11 o'clock on Thursday for our opening ceremony to bring in the new festival that's going to feature 144 artists, 80 brand new to the city, and then lots of great food, as you well know, and great entertainment. And just looking forward to getting this thing kicked off.
Excellent. Well, we are too. Let's hear it for our friends from the Arts Council. There you go. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Angela. Now, if our Realtor friends would come up, and I know there's a few of you. I'd say, yeah, well, why not? You come this far. Yeah, come on up. Yeah, why not?
How are we selling homes today?
Well, as you see, we have a lot of realtors here today representing the profession, as it is Realtor Day in Oklahoma City, and I would ask the clerk to read this proclamation.
Whereas realtors pledge to protect and promote the interests of consumers according to the Code of Ethics. And whereas realtors advocate for home ownership and fair housing through a continuum of housing and service solutions. And whereas realtors develop and implement plans to coordinate the policies, programs, partners, and financial tools that will improve access to safe, quality, and affordable housing in Oklahoma City. And whereas realtors have been key supporters of initiatives essential for the growth of the city, including recent efforts like MAPS 4 and the initiative to keep Oklahoma City a big league city. And whereas realtors are active in addressing community issues, including development of the Way Home Initiative and support of the Key to Home Initiative and support for organizations working with the unhoused population. And whereas realtors engage with city leaders and policymakers to help strengthen the development of our city. Now, therefore, I, David Holt, Mayor of the City of Oklahoma City, do hereby proclaim April 23rd, 2024 as Realtor Day in Oklahoma City.
Thank you. Well, this only partially captures all the great things that realtors do in Oklahoma City, and we're very grateful for the high level of engagement that you have here at City Hall. And to share a little bit more about that, I would yield the floor to Emily K. Mitchelson, and you're the chair, is that the right? The president of the local association. All right, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. We are all honored to be here today. This is our third annual Realtor Day at City Hall. And again, we are excited and delighted to be able to learn, share, and engage. And there are three key issues which we will discuss with you. Again, I welcome all of our realtor friends and appreciate the support and engagement that they have in the development of the city of Oklahoma City and the greater metropolitan area. Again, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and City Council.
Thank you. Let's hear it for our realtors. Here's the key.
Thank you.
Okay, we also have a couple items that require passage on the, oh no, I don't, I'm sorry, that's on the council agenda. So we're done with Office of the Mayor. Advancing to item 4, items from council. We have a couple of items. Item A is a resolution approving travel expenses for council members Carter and Stonecipher to attend the National League of Cities Summer Board and Leadership Meeting in June. Take a motion on that. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously and with the necessary 6 affirmative votes. And then item B is a resolution approving travel expenses for Councilmember Hinkle to travel with the Oklahoma City Chamber for their annual spring Washington, D.C. trip in June. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously and with the necessary 6 affirmative votes. Item 5, City Manager reports. Mr. City Manager.
We do not have any presentations today. The only thing that we have on is claims and payroll.
All right, thank you. Item 6, Journal of Council Proceedings. We have items A and B we could take with one motion. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 7, request for uncontested continuances. We have item 11A already listed on the agenda as being deferred to May 7th. What else might we have, Mr. City Manager?
Starting on page 11, item 11A, 1 and 2. It's page 11, item 11A, 1 and 2, PUD 1979. The request is to defer this to the 7th of May. On page 17, item 11T1, unsecured structures. There's several here that will be stricken from the agenda. Item B, 9814 North Military Avenue, the owner is secured. Item F, 2713 Northwest 14th Street, the owner is secured. Item J, 1444 Southwest 22nd Street, the owner is secured. Item O, 3068 Southwest 37th Place, the owner is secured. Item R, 2637 Southwest 75th Street, the owner is secured. And item S, 8105 Northwest 114th Street, the owner is secured. Continuing on page 17, item 11U1, abandoned buildings. These are all stricken from the agenda. Item D, 2713 Northwest 14th Street, the owner is secured. Item I, 3068 Southwest 37th Place, the owner is secured. And item K, 8105 Northwest 114th Street, the owner is secured. And that's all the items that I have.
All right, thank you. Well, now that brings us to item 8, revocable permits and events. Item 8A is a revocable permit with OKC Black Eats LLC for the Foodie Fest, May 10th and 11th. And we have Apollo Woods here to speak.
Good morning. Back again. So the original event was scheduled for October 7th, but due to weather, we made the decision to move it, which made a good decision. There were some other events on that day that actually were affected by the weather. So nothing's really changed other than we added an additional barrier in front of the Civic Center to make sure we're protecting traffic because there is a wedding on that particular day. We have about 47 vendors that are participating for that day, 11 to 4. We're expecting a great turnout. Our media blitz and all that stuff happens here coming up soon. And then one thing we learned from Foodie Fest on that event, we actually launched the Foodie Fest Small Business Relief Fund because of some of the challenges that our solo entrepreneurs are having as businesses. But we're expecting for a great event, great turnout, and we're asking for your support again.
All right, and this is in Ward 6.
Well, it does, yeah. It sounds like a great event and love that you're using Bicentennial Park, so I'll move for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Have a great event,
Thank you.
Apollo. Thanks. Okay, 8B is a revocable permit with OKC Public Tennis LLC to hold the OSSAA State Tennis Championships in May. We have Tim Ritchie signed up to speak.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. Kanan Lowe and Tim Ritchie at the Oklahoma City Tennis Center requesting the permit for the Oklahoma State Tennis Tournament the first 2 weekends of May for the boys and the girls.
All right, and this is in Ward 2.
Yes, and I would move for approval and wish you well. Let's see how we go, council.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, 8C is a revocable right-of-way use permit with OKC Pride, Inc. to hold the OKC Pride Parade and Festival, May 31st through June 2nd on Northwest 39th. And Tessa White is here to speak.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Our festival this year for Oklahoma City Pride, Proud on 39th Street, will take place May 31st, June 1st, and 2nd. Nothing has changed within the past few years. There will not be a main stage event this year, so it will be highlighted from using local bands And then, of course, we have our parade, which starts at 6 p.m. June 2nd on Sunday. And we should have everything wrapped up on Sunday by 10 p.m.
Great, and this is in Ward 2 as well?
Yes, and I would move for approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think this is my last year with the Oklahoma City Pride. And I just wanted to say thank you so much. This council is just wonderful, and it's been such a true pleasure working with all of you, and thank you.
Likewise, thank you. Bye-bye. All right, that concludes our permits. That brings us to the point of the meeting where we recess council and we convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority. And we have items A through F that we could take with one motion. Staff has not requested the executive session listed at E2.
I would like to motion to be moved into executive session on item E2.
Okay. The motion is to go into executive session E2. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Fails 3-5.
Can we vote separately on item E1, please?
Sure. Okay, so let's bring up then a motion for item E1 specifically. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes 5-3. Now we're back on the rest of the Municipal Facilities Authority docket, items A through D and F. We could take those remaining items with one motion. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Now we'll adjourn OCMFA. Convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority. All we have is item A, claims and payroll, but we can go ahead and take a motion on that. I have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll adjourn OCPPA and reconvene as the council, where we are on page 3 of your printed agenda, item 9, the consent docket. And there is a scheduled presentation for item B as in boy, D as in David, and that's it. Is there any other item that a council member wishes to speak to, pull out for a separate vote?
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to speak to item 9Q, please.
Q?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, item BL.
Okay. If there's nothing else, we can take them in order, which means we'll start with item Q, Councilman Stonecipher.
Thank you, Mayor. From time to time, we receive donations for the animal welfare divisions from our citizens, and item 9Q is one of those donations in the amount of $10,000. This donation to animal welfare comes from Dr. James Wise, and if my research is correct, he's an ophthalmologist here in Oklahoma City associated with Integris Hospital, and so I just wanted to personally thank Dr. Wise for that $10,000 donation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up will be item BD for a presentation.
Yes, Chris York, our budget director, will give us a presentation on our proposed amendment to the 23-24 budget.
Thank you, City Manager. So this is budget amendment number 3 for fiscal year 2024. It's expected to be our last one, and it's pretty straightforward. This amendment would only impact one fund. It's our internal service fund where we house a lot of our inward-facing services, your IT, your print shop, fleet services, and so on. Just two increases proposed today. One is for our fleet services program, an increase of $672,000. This is going to be used for parts and maintenance coming in higher than budgeted. This is not unique to fleet. Anywhere that we're buying parts in the city, we're seeing prices higher than in prior years. They propose to use fund balance as their funding source for this, and they still have a healthy fund balance even after this increase. We also have a proposed increase in the information technology section of the Internal Service Fund for $900,000. And this is related to our implementation of our ERP system, which is our financial system. We're moving from PeopleSoft to Oracle Cloud. We only do this once every couple of decades, and so the implementation has taken a little bit longer than we expected. But given that we only do it so often and we do house all of our financial transactions there, we do want to take our time and get it right. We would also recommend fund balance as the funding source for that as well. And I'm sorry, that was $990,000. And so the total increase today is $1.66 million, and that would increase the city's total budget to $1.93 billion. And again, this is the introduction, so we'll bring this back to you on May the 7th for adoption if you so choose.
All right, and finally, item BL, Councilwoman Nice.
Yes, I just wanted to just get some more knowledge and understanding. I know we're going to the final acceptance and placing the maintenance bonds into effect. One of my concerns always and questions is as we go through this process and even the transparency of what the understanding of how these processes are completed, I still have quite a few things that are left to be done and fixed with this particular facility. So I am concerned about us just finally accepting the maintenance bonds when we still have maintenance to do.
David Todd, MAPS Program Manager. Of course, there's going to be things that need to be adjusted and repaired, and that's part of the maintenance bond. Those are things that the contractor has to do. So I'm not aware of anything. I'm sure my people are, and we'll stay on top of that and working with Parks because they are becoming the managers of that contract. But if we're aware of anything, we'll make sure it gets fixed.
Well, to my knowledge, there have been some things that still have not been addressed. So I guess that's why my question remains as to where we are in the acceptance of the bonds.
Like I said, there's going to be things that, you know, you put in an air conditioner and it's going to have an issue, and it's part of the warranty procedure. So this is common with what we do. We put the final acceptance and put the bonds in place, and that allows the contractor to do his maintenance.
Okay.
We'll make sure it's taken care of.
I appreciate that. But I want to make mention too, because these are things that I usually hear from either my residents, the people that are participants, and or the operators, not in that order. But we opened this center in December. I know there was at least one point in time we had to close the pool for 2.5 weeks due to some maintenance issues. And that tells me here we are in April and we opened this facility in December. You know, that's a concern for me as we continue to look at contracts, contractors, and going for the lowest bid. And I know this is something that I have continued to express my concerns about, because when we go for these lowest bids, technically we're not fully getting the best, possibly the best bid out of how we can do better work where we don't have to continue to come back and ask for some things to be fixed and maintained. So that's my concern as we continue to work through these processes, because I know even with some other MAPS 4 projects, we have some contractors that we are currently working with that are going to be of concern when it comes to these facilities and how and who is going to be contracting and or working with those contracts. So I just wanted to make that clear and plain, and I look forward to us actually finishing completely this senior wellness center.
Can I add just one thing? Part of the delay on this between the ribbon cutting that we had, a substantial completion and final completion, is when we were doing the ribbon cutting, I noticed a couple of things that were of safety concern of mine, and I asked the contractor to do some extra work. Specifically, there was a ramp out there by the parking lot that needed to be redone, and then at the handicap spaces, there was a curb that looked like it was a hazard for seniors, and I was afraid somebody was going to step off and break an ankle or something like that. So I asked them to put a rail across the front, and that was a stainless steel special order thing. So that's, if you want to say on me, whatever, it took some extra time to do that, but I think it was worth the safety issue.
And actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because that brings another point. So I know you're like, oh, Lord, here she goes some more. But my more of a concern for me is we have a committee for disabilities that represents our city. And it took a young man at that opening that is in a wheelchair to point out some other things that he saw that were of concern as a person that would need to use as far as having access. So I am concerned in asking how we can vet those projects through that particular committee and that body to ensure that even we as a city do not have to go back to the table to make sure we are doing the work to correct things that should have been done from the beginning, especially when we have a volunteer committee of people that we give awards to every year that can speak to the concerns of all of these public facilities that we are building.
All right, thank you. We can now vote on the consent docket. A motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Then we have item 10, the concurrence docket. We have items A through J we can take with one motion. A motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We're now on items requiring separate votes. Item 11A was previously deferred, which brings us to item 11B. This is an ordinance on final hearing. It was recommended for approval. Rezoning 2829 South MacArthur from I-2 to PUD 1997. Councilwoman Peck, no one has signed up to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 11C is an ordinance on final hearing. It was recommended for approval, establishing a special permit to operate use unit 8250.7, emergency shelters and feeding sites in the downtown business and HL overlay districts at 127 Northwest 7th. Councilwoman Hammond, the applicant, has signed up to speak.
Yeah, if they could come up and talk about the project, that would be great.
This is the very Reverend Katie Churchwell.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Katie Churchwell. I'm the dean, which is fancy Episcopal talk for senior pastor at St. Paul's Episcopal Cathedral. And it is wonderful to finally stand before you today and to answer any questions that you may have in order to help us move forward in serving our city in this sort of very particular way.
Can you just, I guess, even for the benefit of the public, kind of talk a little just about the history of how you got here, kind of what sort of inspired the need, but then also kind of the process of what you walked through with staff to kind of identify the gap that you'll all be filling with this permit?
Absolutely. So 2 winters ago, we were approached by a local nonprofit, OK End Homelessness, and were asked if 2 days before a devastating cold snap, we would be willing to offer our space. And it was the easiest and the hardest yes that I've made in quite some time. We are a church, we're not a shelter. We, in some ways, have a great space to temporarily have people stay with us, and in other ways, we don't. For example, we don't have showers. We do, however, have a really fantastic kitchen and a great fellowship hall. And when it came to honoring our call as both Christians and Episcopalians to respect the dignity of every human being, we realized that our own personal comfort did not supersede the actual lives of humans who will in fact die if they're exposed to such frigid temperatures for prolonged periods of time. And so we immediately jumped into action, and I'll say that this is my official moment to say that I guess I'm asking for forgiveness because we didn't know that we needed to ask for permission, but we're so glad to be asking for permission now. And so we engaged with as many partners as we possibly could that first winter, including our neighbors across the way at DEQ, local churches, Bikers for Christ. And if you're not familiar with Episcopalians, we'll just say that maybe Bikers for Christ are not who you would normally peg us to hang out with. However, it created this really magical moment where literally over Christmas, so the December 21st through the Monday following Christmas, we had men, women, and children staying with us. Our own youth minister got to play Santa, but Santa's real for those who were concerned about this, and set up stockings and Christmas presents for the 7 children that we had staying with us. And it was a really magical moment. It pushed us as a community to probably engage the way that Christ would ask us to engage all of the time and not just when it's cold. What it did do for us, though, was it made us realize that there's a real need in our city that we had been blind to. And so that winter, it was recorded that there were 8 deaths due to exposure. And because we housed about 60 people, that to us felt truly like we were meeting a life or death need. As we moved forward, with our planning and with preparation to be prepared for yet another winter. This past winter, we partnered with even more institutions, including the YMCA in downtown, who allowed us to use their shower facilities. We worked with City Care, with the Homeless Alliance, with St. Anthony's, as we had to bring many people to receive medical care, including Derek, who through our shelter found his way to Cardinal House, where he received excellent medical care, but also lost all of the toes on his left foot due to exposure. So it really has been a learning and growing opportunity for us. We would absolutely love to one day not be a temporary shelter, but in this moment, in this time, we feel like this is our call and at least one way in which we as a community get to engage more broadly, not just in fulfilling our commandment by God and by Christ to love our neighbors as ourselves, but also to be good citizens of our city and our community. And in a really fun way, it's doing this permit, which is not really work that they teach you how to do in seminary, just in case you were wondering. They also don't teach you in seminary how to run a temporary shelter, but it's been a great way to learn, and really it's been a great way to connect with our community that is around us in regard to our local business community, our residents. And so being able to talk with people about sort of this particular aspect of our city and in ways in which we get to work together has been really affirming. And it's been a really great chance for the cathedral to engage as citizens in a really phenomenal way. And part of that has been the great engagement that we've received in particular from the business community with our most recent shelter, where Urbane donated the best smelling shampoo and body soap, and Plenty Mercantile the cutest socks, that when we had our guests with us, they said, I normally get given, a pair of socks that's gonna last for maybe a week, but these are really good socks. And normally we get given soap that, it's just soap. And they said, but this one actually makes my skin feel soft. So not only was it an opportunity to have people not die, which no one deserves to die on a sidewalk, but it also was an opportunity in which we were able to treat humans as humans, and humans who deserve just as good as you and me. From our shelter, we were able to find permanent housing for people. We were able to reunite families and take people permanently off of the streets. And we were able to get people into various forms of treatment, whether that would be medical treatment for a few people who had some unmanaged diabetes, as well as alcohol and substance treatment. So it's not we are very specific that this is a permit for a temporary shelter. We are called to do this for a period of time when circumstances in our oh so wonderful yet confusing Oklahoma weather presents us, but also an opportunity to engage with our social service providers, to be sort of a middle conduit for people accessing long-term services that are really going to transform their lives.
Yeah, I think it's been about a few months since we met to sort of talk about the process and kind of this coming to council. And it's a very neat to see folks sort of step and fill in a need that I know, talking with our service providers, we do have a much more robust cold weather response system now for people experiencing homelessness, but knowing that there's always gaps that arise for people that they cannot fill for various reasons. So yeah, it's really neat to see you all sort of jump into action to respond to this need. And unless there are any other questions, I'm happy to move for approval and get you all officially permitted.
I do. First, thank you for walking us through your work. And for anybody who hasn't had a chance yet, I think page 2 of the document, where it's the actual application for the special permit, where you've walked us through your partnership with City Care and OK End Homelessness. I think it's responsible and it's detailed, and I just really appreciate you, because my understanding is it's permanent supportive housing we need to be doing, but then it's also building housing for people who aren't necessarily homeless but might be making lower than the average median income. I guess the question I have 2 questions I just pulled up. Normally I would not do this, but since it is your work, I pulled up the Bible. And am I correct with this quote? Because it's going to be a bigger question for City Manager Freeman in a second. I just want to make sure I'm reading this right. Isaiah 58:7. Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them and to not turn away from your own flesh and blood. Am I reading that right? Is that about right?
That sounds right to me, but I'm an Episcopalian and not Baptist, and so my ability to quote scripture is we just lack in that area sometimes. But whether you're reading our Hebrew scripture or you're reading from the Gospels or if you're reading from the New Testament, there are multiple instances throughout the Christian canon that indicate that if not the primary, at least a primary responsibility of followers of Christ and people who believe in God is to be responsive to the needs of others. And Jesus is quite clear that you're responsive to the needs of others, period. Not, there's no little asterisk that says if they meet certain requirements or if, if it's convenient for you. I mean, in so many ways, it's incredibly inconvenient for us to house people. It disrupts sort of our normal way of living. But it's also a great reminder that living on the streets or living in your car or bouncing from couch to couch is not what I think most of us would consider a normal way of living. And so to offer a place of respite, certainly for us, is fulfilling a commandment from God.
Well, as someone who teaches English and citing sources whenever we're going to make an argument, I thought I would just bring the source for your work. But this is actually a question ultimately, I think, for the city manager, and maybe even Assistant City Manager Aubrey McDermott, who's working over Key to Home with us, right? Because this is the calling in the source material, it strikes me that as Key to Home, this public-private partnership is underway right now, and successfully so, where we're hiring case managers like the ones you have here, mental health providers to go out to connect people who are experiencing homelessness to the sort of services like you're providing. And maybe you don't have that answer right now, but what is further outreach going to look like to the different faith groups, the denominations, their houses of worship? My guess is there are other houses of worship out there across denominations within Christianity and the other sacred texts and religions that want to help do something about homelessness. Their source material is all but imploring them to do that. But I worry that not enough of those places of worship know, for instance, about Key to Home and how they could be helping. And so, amen. And so, yeah. It just seems that there's the need, there's the willing, but I do not feel we have tapped into, I'm not saying we go make all the churches do the stuff, but there are those who would like to, because it is their calling. But I don't think enough of them know about the sort of partnership opportunities that exist with the service providers who know truly how to become the support system. And so I think this sort of moment to me speaks to what's possible. And if you wonder why, I know it's Ward 6, why is Ward 2 piping in? Because I'm really worried, City Manager. I saw a PBS NewsHour segment last night about a Supreme Court case that is on its way to a ruling this summer, where it is very likely that the Supreme Court is about to rule that it will be okay for cities to arrest people experiencing homelessness, to put them in jail. And part of the city in Oregon's argument about why they should be able to do it is that local governments know best about how to handle this issue. That's right, we do. It's this approach. And what I'm really worried is coming our way this summer is a rebuke of the work that you're doing and the rebuke of the work that we are doing. And we're about to send people to a county jail that has been under investigation by the Department of Justice. And I am really worried that unless we are engaging people of faith whose own book is asking them to do this work, is their calling, that we are going to miss the mark, and then we're about to have cover to put people in under investigation for human rights abuses county jail. So I really, really worry about what's coming. I spoke at Leith, but I am worried because it goes against my values and it goes against my understanding of what good government's supposed to do in terms of solutions. So
Yeah, well, I think you said it when we started, that the key to home has really got us, the city, on a great path that is really focusing towards a housing first, not just philosophy, but a strategy for housing first. And it's focused right now on those that are most critically homeless, that are dealing with the greatest issues. But it's definitely on our path. Right now, the fundraising is going very well. We've had additional funds have been donated. I do think, I want to check with the team just to see how much outreach we've had in the faith community. I mean, we've had it in philanthropy generally, not just focused to the faith community. There are a lot of people I know in the faith community that want to be able to participate and sometimes don't know how. Sure. We want to get them coordinated, participating together, that we're all doing this together in a strategy as opposed to just everyone doing their own thing. But our focus definitely is towards doing what we can to get the services out there, doing the homeless outreach, providing the housing and the services for them. And so it's a continuation of what we're doing already, but I can check to see if there's more that we could do to try to do some outreach there so they know how they can participate.
well, thank you, City Manager, for that, and thank you for being the model. So.
I would just love to just interject for a moment and say that one of the best assets that churches have is their space. Whether that's parking lots, whether that's their fellowship halls, and certainly in the Episcopal Church, one of the best, not the cathedral, but other churches, one of the best assets that they have is undeveloped land. So as you consider all aspects of partnership, a great place to begin looking, or at least continue to look for where to build affordable housing, is going to be on church property. And so there is a model across the National Episcopal Church in which churches fundraise and do and build their own affordable housing. And the only way that we are able to do our shelter is through partnership. And so to ask a church, right, like doing this permit nearly undid us. This was the hardest work I've had to do in a while. Good work, but you're taking church organizations that are trying to impact their city and their communities in a way in which, right, like our cities and our communities are infinitely more complicated than they ever have been. And so if there are people who can come alongside churches or other nonprofits and say, hey, we can help walk you through this and journey alongside you shoulder to shoulder, you'll have willing and really excited participants to engage with you in this work.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll move for approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Okay, next up is item 11D. This is an ordinance on final hearing establishing reserved parking for the physically disabled on the south side of Northwest 4th near North Broadway. Councilwoman Hammond.
I'll move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item E is an ordinance on final hearing. This relates to parking enforcement. We had a presentation and a public hearing, and today is the third of 3 meetings, therefore, on this proposed ordinance change, and we could adopt it if that is the council's desire. There is a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item F is an ordinance to be introduced, set for a public hearing on May 7th, final hearing on May 21st, relating to Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs. And as this is the first meeting for this proposal, there is a presentation. Yes.
Thank you. Melinda McMillan Miller, the Parks and Recreation Director. This is an item to be introduced as the Park Commission has been working on making some modifications to Chapter 38. Mostly this is a lot of vocabulary cleanup, whereas the Park Commission is a recommending body to you, this body, the City Council. It also kind of cleans up some different language in the restrictions of selling and advertising in parks. It cleans up language within permits that, again, a recommending body to City Council. And then also asks the director to present proprietary fees as a schedule to this body at least once annually, or as necessary as changed. So really, this is just, it's a very small little changes at this point with this little group. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer that at this time.
I have questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Will you explain why we're going through this process?
It's a lot of cleanup. So a lot for the, between the Park Commission, the Game and Fish Commission, Golf Commission, Riverfront Redevelopment Authority, and what's my fifth one? Forgetting. There are 5 different bodies of Trails Advisory Committee. All 5 bodies have different, I guess you'd consider them to be rules or administrative, guidelines for how they operate, and we're trying to make them very consistent. That helps cut down on ambiguity. It helps cut down on confusion between all the different 5 bodies of how they bring items to this group, to council for approvals. So again, this is just, we're trying to get everything kind of caught up. This had not been changed in over 20 years. So again, just kind of get that language caught up and get back to standardization.
Well, it seems like this came very conveniently after we had a issue with our waste transfer station, and also how now that conversation is now deemed for a designee and or for the Parks Director to make that recommendation and not the Parks Commission. Is that part of why this process became to be?
No, ma'am. This is actually all part of, again, bringing the language to be consistent. The waste transfer stations will actually come through, the Park Commission created its own sets of bylaws, rules and regulations to help that body understand its position and its priorities. So within that document, which will come to this body at another time, within that document, it actually outlines very specifically in great detail of how the Park Commission is to respond to waste transfer station requests from the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality. Those requests, again, when you will see that document come to you probably in another month or so, as we're just fine-tuning some language in that with legal, you'll see in there that it's extremely detailed of how we've had so much ambiguity over the past 2 or 3 waste transfer station requests that we recognized that there was a really big problem, and we wanted to make sure we got it down to the period and sentence to make sure that there was a very clear outline of expectations, not only for us as a department, but for you as council, and also for any applicant.
Okay, thank you. And I'll probably have more comments during the public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Melinda.
Melinda, I got a question.
I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
I've had a lot of people who are photographers
Yes.
reach out to me that are not happy about,
Right.
at least just the way it looks.
That's not in this.
That's not in there.
It's not part of this permit?
It's not in here. Do you see a room full of photographers?
Is that a trick question?
You're on
Yeah.
candid camera right now.
Well, we talked about the permits, so
When we
that's why
talk-
I'm asking.
That's right. When we talk about the fees and the permits coming back, we'll brief council on that before we bring that forward. So it's still in review right now.
Yeah.
Oh, thank God. Okay.
That's not in this, though. This is truly just the codification changes for the Park Commission body itself. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right, so today, as stated, is introduction. 2 more meetings for considering this proposed ordinance change. So today we can take a motion for introduction. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously and is scheduled for public hearing on May 7th and final hearing on May 21st. Next up is item G. This is an ordinance to be introduced, set for public hearing May 7th and final hearing May 21st. Also relating to parks, recreation, and cultural affairs, but I think in this case, maybe model aircrafts?
Good morning, Chris Browning, Utilities Director. At Lakes Hefner and Draper, there are areas designated where people can fly model aircraft. At Draper, that facility is covered under this current ordinance, the facility operation and the fees accordingly. At Hefner, there was a permit or a lease agreement issued in 1999 that has since expired. So what we want to do is model this, redo this ordinance, modify this ordinance so that we can include Hefner under the same terms and conditions where it'll be a management agreement rather than a lease agreement. In addition, there are fees identified in the ordinance that will enable us to collect fees for permits, but then the organization can recover 90% of those fees for their operation and maintenance of the facility. And so they actually set those fees. They told us how much money they needed. We know how much it cost us to administrate the fee collection, and so we've structured the fees accordingly. So what we're asking for consideration today is to modify the ordinance to enable the facility at Hefner to be similar to the facility at Draper, the terms and conditions. So with that, I'd be happy to answer questions that you may have.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
All right, well, we could take a motion then for introduction. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. The proposed ordinance change is introduced, set for public hearing May 7th and final hearing May 21st. Okay, that brings us to item H. And items H through Q are essentially all related, and we are going to get a presentation that covers all of them.
Yes, yes. This is related back to a fee study that we started a couple of years ago, and Chris York, our budget director, is going to present this item. We did brief council on this. We've had interactions with various groups that are affected by some of the fees, and from the feedback that we received, we've made adjustments on that. And so I'm going to let Chris walk us through this, talk a bit about the study, and then take us through the fees that are proposed for today.
Thank you, City Manager. As Mr. Freeman indicated, we've briefed council on this individually. We've also sent out an update paper within the last week. So I'll just go over the overview and maybe catch up our residents to what's being proposed here. So back in fiscal year 2022, council approved a contract with MGT to assess all of our fees across the city for services that we provide. And these are going to be things like animal welfare services, building inspections, and so on. These are not going to be fines or citations or anything of that nature. MGT worked with city staff over the next year and a half to develop a model and a report, and they published that report to us at the end of last calendar year. And that report, in summary, said that we were undercharging about $21 million for what it cost us to deliver those services. So at that time, we started some council briefings on it. We also asked staff to evaluate the proposals and put us on a path towards full cost recovery. I should pause there to say we need to do these reviews every so often from two aspects. One, we can't legally charge more than it costs us to deliver the service, especially when we're the only game in town able to provide the service. And also the other way, to be fiscally responsible, because when you see a gap like $21 million, it is impacting service levels. To put that in some context for you, our general fund budget is $615 million some odd dollars this year. That's about 3% of our revenue for the year. And however many positions and supplies that could be used out of that 21 million. So as we started the council briefings, what was initially proposed was about half of that. And so staff proposed about a $10.7 million number. And we also started to engage with some of the special interest groups like our construction folks, our architectural committees and so forth, our architectural groups rather. And based on that feedback, we did adjust some of the individual fees. But the big change from when you were initially briefed in council to what is being proposed today is really the implementation timeline. And so you can see that on the slide here, that what's being proposed today would go into effect July 1st of this year. And it's about half of what was originally proposed, which again was about half of what the consultant recommended. So right at $5.5 million in year one, and then we would follow that by smaller increases over the next few years at 2.2 next year, 1.3 the year following, and about $500,000 for that last year's increase. As we zoom in to the departments and functions that went through the process this year, you can see we're back to that $10.7 million on your far left, and then the implementation schedule on your right. And you'll note that for some of the smaller increases, as an example, development services, animal welfare function, those fee increases are proposed to come online immediately because it's a relatively small number. When we have some of the larger increases like development services or fire prevention, those are staggered out over the next few years. And with that, that's all the overview that I have for you. As Craig mentioned, I believe this would set a public hearing for May 7th, and then we will bring it back to you for a final hearing on May the 21st. If you have questions about individual fee changes, we have staff on hand to answer those questions.
All right.
Thanks, Chris.
Well, if there's no questions or comments, we're just going to kind of go through this. It's a lot of votes. It kind of reminds me of those code updates we did a few weeks ago. So, and again, everything is going to be introducing it and setting it for a public hearing May 7th and a final hearing on May 21st. So we'll begin with item 11H. This relates to water resources. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item I, this relates to the general schedule of fees. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item J, this also relates to the general schedule of fees. Actually, all of these do, of course. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item K, still voting on the fees. Really don't want to get hung up here. There we go. Motion and a second on item K. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item L. A motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item M. A motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item N.
Mayor, on this one,
Yeah.
when maybe it's the public hearing or maybe it's on the final vote, but I would like to drill down just a little bit more in terms of, so a few of us on council, maybe all of council, I wasn't there for it, received a briefing about these fees. And I think what might be very useful for the public, again, maybe it's for the other items too, but definitely for the municipal courts one, I'd like for the public to hear specifically to where those fees go, like what administrative cost, why staff would maybe need that funding to be able to accomplish the work that they are doing. That was something I found very useful to learn. So I'd like for the residents to hear that. Thank you.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on item N. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item O. A motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item P. Motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. And finally, on this topic of fees, item Q. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, item R is a public hearing regarding utilities development standards. This was presented at our last meeting. This is the second of 3 meetings on this proposed ordinance change. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak under this public hearing?
No, they haven't.
Okay, so we will close that public hearing and proceed to item S, which is another public hearing, S1, regarding the dilapidated structures here listed. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak?
No, they haven't.
So we will close that hearing and advance to S2, which is the resolution declaring that the structures are dilapidated. I have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 11T1 is a public hearing regarding the unsecured structures here listed, except for those previously struck. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak?
They have not.
All right, so we will close the hearing and advance to the resolution found at T2 declaring the structures are unsecured. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item U is a public hearing. Item U1 is a public hearing regarding the abandoned buildings here listed, except for those previously struck. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak?
No, they haven't.
They have not, and so we will close the public hearing and advance to the resolution found at U2 declaring that the buildings are abandoned. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 11V this is the second of 2 meetings considering this commitment. First, we have the public hearing, V1, regarding the joint resolution with the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust approving the allocation of GEO-limited tax bond proceeds in an amount of $2 million. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak under this public hearing?
No, they haven't.
If not, and so we will close the public hearing and advance to the resolution found at V2. This is the joint resolution with the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust approving the allocation of GEO-limited tax bond proceeds and/or general obligation limited tax bond investment proceeds in an amount of $2 million to provide for certain community development incentives for the Alley's End Affordable Housing Project at E.K. Gaylord and Northwest 4th. We had a presentation. If there's no comments or questions, we can potentially adopt the resolution. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 11W is a resolution declaring city-owned property adjacent to 3301 Southwest 17th, south of the Dell OKC campus, to be surplus and abandoned for park purposes. This is the 3rd meeting on this potential sale of real estate. We've had an introduction, a public hearing, and today a potential adoption of a resolution. If there's no comments or questions, we could take it up. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item X is a resolution adopting an update to BikeWalk OKC, and we have a presentation.
Yes, Jeff Butler, our planning director, is here, and he's going to give us a presentation on these amendments. We did brief on this back in the fall, but it's been a while, and we've been working through some issues here. So I'll let Jeff walk through the changes that are proposed in BikeWalk, and we can have our discussion.
Thank you. Again, Jeff Butler, Planning Director. So this is we're ending a long process here. Our goal was to update BikeWalk OKC, which was originally adopted in 2018. And fortunately, the city has had quite a bit of funding through sales tax, general obligation bond, and maps to make quite a bit of progress in the original BikeWalk OKC plan, which did have quite a number of projects in it. So that's the good news. We felt like in advance, in preparation for additional MAPS funds to be spent and future general obligation bonds and potentially grant funds and so on, we wanted to make sure that the plan was up to date. So here we are a few years into the original plan, and we have a lot of new projects, some lessons learned that we've been able to put into the plan, make some important amendments. So I'll walk you through that. Again, as Craig mentioned, we had a briefing. It's been some time. We've made some refinements since last October when we briefed the council and gave you the draft plan. No substantive updates, a lot of quality control, kind of formatting issues, making sure that everything is consistent within the plan and kind of tying up loose ends. So with that, I'll give you a brief update as to what has changed and what's in the plan. So again, we've done a lot of work. These are the miles of trails and sidewalk and bike lanes that have been built since 2018. So that's something to be pleased with. As far as the plan goes, we have a few sections in the plan. We have our pedestrian priority areas. Those tend to be in the core of the city because that's really where we had a lot of missing sidewalks. There was a significant period of time, as you're aware, when Oklahoma City did not build sidewalks. But we have the original PPAs. We have some new PPAs that we've added. They're starting to expand into other areas kind of further out beyond the original area. We have several other focus areas of the plan that focus on sidewalks, getting people to transit, schools, and parks. So here are the original and new pedestrian priority areas. The new ones are in yellow. So you can see that we're kind of filling in gaps and expanding out into different areas. Here's an example of what the plan looks like. You see there will be maps like this, many of them that show a specific area and the sidewalks, how they're prioritized in different phases for funding. So here's an example of a new pedestrian priority area. And this is around the Oklahoma City Community College area. So this, it shows a couple different phases of sidewalks. The reds are phase 1 and the green are phase 2. We're focusing on getting people to the places they need to go. That's just one example of 10 new PPAs. Here's another one on the southeast side. It's kind of centered around Grand Boulevard. Again, this shows the different phases of sidewalks to be funded. Examples, the next 3 slides show examples of the other focus areas. This one includes transit lines. So we want to make sure that we focus on getting pedestrians able to walk to the bus stop, from the bus stop to their destination. Typically those are on arterials. So these kind of go out into the suburban areas a little bit more. We have several, the red dots you see here are schools, and so we have many projects that try and focus on helping students get to their schools safely. Within roughly a quarter mile of their school, we try and build those to get them to schools and back home safely. Similarly with the park projects, getting people to and from parks in a safe manner. So those are kind of scattered throughout the city, and these are outside of PPAs. There are a lot of parks and schools within PPAs that are being covered by those sidewalks. And the bike facilities, this map is largely the same as it was in 2018. There have been some modifications as we learn a thing or two. There have been some adjustments. The tiers are still the same. We still have Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 that refer to the protected bike lanes or all the way to just a shared lane where you have a low traffic and low volume street, low traffic and low speed street. We have a lot of new trails. There are many trails. This is a many decades worth of trails here. We hope to just kind of chip away over time. But it's important to have that list of trails so that we can plan long ways into the future. Here's that trail priorities map. So the red trails are some of those that are highly prioritized. You'll see those kind of throughout the city. And finally, we have the bike and pedestrian bridge locations. There are some bridges that need to be replaced or upgraded. In some cases, we have new bridges that we would like to see. So those are on there as well, and whether they're new or existing that need some improvements. Just wanted to mention we have a section in the plan that talks about, for example, micromobility. That's wasn't necessarily new in 2018, but it was still pretty new. It's now something that we if you go throughout town, we see a lot of people riding scooters in our bike lanes, which is great. So we're focusing on providing parking areas, for example, as pictured here, and some other things to accommodate all different kinds of mobility. Different ways to protect bike lanes, as shown here. We've got all kinds of examples, both in Oklahoma City now and throughout the country. We're always looking at best practices to see what we can do in a cost-effective manner to get bike lanes built and maximum protection and safety for our residents that use them. Parking has been one of those things that we've learned a lot about, just different ways to provide parking, and it can be very complicated and take a lot of time designing these facilities because of the complications involved with right-of-way and driveways and existing parking and so on. But we have a couple of new projects pictured here, different ways to do it that are all effective. Parking protected bike lanes, for example, back-in parking on 39th Street where there's a bike facility. So we've learned a lot, and as we install these facilities and pilot them, we're able to make improvements to our standards so that we can do a better job in the future. And finally, we have performance measures in the plan, things that we're able to track over time, see if people are indeed using facilities more than they were. We're tracking safety as well. And one quick plug, we're related to safety. We're now transitioning right into our Vision Zero plan, which will affect all modes of transportation, including, of course, bike and pedestrian infrastructure. Excuse me. I'd like to thank staff, our transportation planning team, as well as our bike advisory team. We had a lot of effort and involvement in this plan, and so we're happy to see it come to this point, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Jeff, a couple of things. I want to thank the advisory group and staff for all their hard work. I know a lot of work has gone into this. What I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, I'd like to get a copy of your presentation that you made today, if you could email that to me.
Will do.
I received this report late Friday afternoon. It's a 135-page report. I haven't been able to get all the way through it yet, and I'd like to sit down with you about some questions I have in the report. And so at this time, I'd like to move to defer this for 2 weeks, please, Mayor.
Okay.
Before we do that, I want to continue with discussion because there are some things that I believe we could also look at while we're in that deferral time frame to maybe add or also prioritize if it's already in this document. And I couldn't find it, so maybe you can help me find what page it's on. But I'm looking for the educational component of how we continue to connect our neighbors and our residents to what these projects look like. And clearly, I don't have to tell you my difficulty with what's happening on Lottie. But I had to respond this weekend to multiple Facebook posts tagging me about the issues that are happening within that area and the lack of signage and also the lack of understanding what's going on. So if there is a page here, I'd love to see it. I was looking also there was something that talked about lessons learned, but even with the lessons learned, I didn't see that addressed as far as how we are intentional about maybe those priority spaces, because we are literally, in some communities, we are giving them a whole new street. And the onus is on us to ensure that as the steward of ensuring their safety, that they are safe. And there's already been quite a few accidents because of what has not been listed on this street. So I am concerned, and I'm hoping there can be a priority section of what intentionally we will do besides, like I see Watch For Me OKC, and I know we have had some community conversations, and I appreciate the staff for walking with me on that street, which we experienced almost being hit ourselves from drivers. So for that to happen, these are the things that clearly our neighbors are not aware of is also taking place for them to prioritize them. Because I said this before, one of the issues when we do these types of projects in certain communities, not all, certain communities, and we change the fabric of that road, it is considered gentrification to those residents. And again, that onus is on us to ensure that this is not gentrification, but this is an improvement for your safety, your health, and your benefit. So how can we do that better and create, even in this document of more, if someone wants to read it while going to sleep or going to bed and wake up and find something good to read, that we are still prioritizing and they understand effectively and efficiently that this is a document for moving toward their healthy future.
Yeah, good question. We a couple things. I think I'd separate it into two different aspects. One, like Lottie, for example, that was a pilot project, is a pilot project for parking protected bike lanes. So as we install that and kind of get feedback, we've made some improvements. For example, putting up signs that other communities have done saying, you know, pointing to the right side saying this is bike lane, pointing to the left side saying this is parking. Things to make it more intuitive for people, and also putting up additional delineators at intersections, for example, so that it's clear that this is a bike lane, kind of don't drive here, because some people were still driving as if it were still a 4-lane road. So education in the sense of making the facility itself as intuitive as possible. There are some things, I don't have a page number for you, but I can get that in BikeWalk that talk about kind of how to use bike facilities. One of our action items will be to, and it has been, you know, we've got Watch For Me that we've been working on for a few years now. We want to make website improvements to make it available for people to see how to use facilities, both for drivers and pedestrians. And I think some of that will be addressed in Vision Zero as well. And I would say additionally, like in future projects, when we go to implementation phase, doing a little bit more through maybe flyers, a little more outreach than we did. We did a lot of outreach on Lottie, for example, but a little more specific when it comes to the point where we're actually installing it maybe would be good to show people, hey, this is coming and it's coming, you know, next month, and here's how to use it. So we have some action items procedurally for us and working with Public Works to get those sorts of things in line. We also have an action item to work with Public Works this coming year on the standards for those bike lanes to make them more intuitive and safer, because I think that's a big part of the communication. So
And
it's been
I think,
good to hear
too,
the feedback.
It is, and I think too, like anytime we're putting in a new, like you talked about with the one on Lottie, anytime we're putting in a new type of application where none of us have seen that before, at least in our community, I think it's important, but also even in areas where there have been no bike lanes before, that we want to really be focused that just in a particular area you just aren't used to seeing bike lanes or the sharrows or whichever, to understand what that is. So we want to do a better job with that in the outreach.
And I appreciate that, because I don't think anyone understands the difficulty of driving. Just last week, someone went around me on one of those lanes because, you know, clearly this is what people are used to doing. They're used to the road, they're used to what it is, and because it doesn't say you can't park here, we're going to continue to do what we're used to. And that's the difficulty of sometimes not having that information up front. And I know, and again, I prefaced that with saying we did do outreach, and I appreciate the things that we were able to do. But at the same time, it's how do we continue to incorporate and engage those residents and neighbors to say, this is because we have had pedestrian collisions. This is because our communities are vulnerable in certain areas of our city. This is because we need you to look at how we had Earth Day yesterday. This is a part of how we conserve the things that are happening as far as environmental justice within this part of our community as well. So there's so many more factors that are involved with this project that I believe we haven't touched the surface on to ensure that our neighbors and our residents really understand that this is a healthy aspect of being able to create a bike lane for you, and not for you to say, this is not for me and this is not for my community. So that's what I have been hoping we could continue to do, and I know we will, and we'll do that as we need to. So again, maybe if there's a way to look at even prioritizing Adapt OKC, some pieces of Adapt OKC that can implement how BikeWalk OKC works with that. That would be helpful maybe as at the end of how all of these plans continue to work together. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So we have a motion to defer this item for 2 weeks. Motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item is deferred to our meeting in 2 weeks, which is May 7th.
Correct.
Okay, next up is item Y. This is a resolution waiving competitive bidding with respect to the letter of credit and reimbursement agreement between the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust and Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation, et cetera. This relates directly to item Z, which I'll go ahead and state is a resolution authorizing the incurrence of indebtedness by the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust, and there's a presentation on these items.
Yes. So Chris York is going to introduce the presentation, our presenter. This really is something that we've gone through and done debt on this before. One of them is regarding our commercial paper program. The other one is regarding some refunding bonds. And so I'll let Chris introduce the item, and then we can talk through that and take any questions.
Good morning again, Chris Browning, Utilities Director. Mayor, thank you for recognizing that these two items are somewhat connected. They're both related to utilities financing. So today we have Dennis Whaley with PFM, who's going to do a short presentation on both for your consideration. But before that, I'd really like to thank our team, Vanessa Aguilar, business manager, and her team, who worked very, very hard for the last few months to put this together. I think it's going to be a good deal for the water utilities and the city going forward. So with that, Dennis Whaley will present. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Dennis Whaley with PFM. PFM is the financial advisor to the City of Oklahoma City. I'll first speak to item Y, which is the credit facility. The Water Trust has had a facility to support the CP program with State Street Bank, and that facility expires June 4th. A solicitation was done for a new credit facility provider. It was completed, and SMBC was selected as the new provider. The new facility will be in place in May and expire May 11 of 29, and this indebtedness was previously approved by a CP order on May 26, 2020. Then for item Z, the bond sale, a resolution was approved by the trust on March 26 to begin the bond sale process. Rating meetings were held on April 18, and we expect an affirmation of the AAA ratings in early May. The sale is scheduled for May 14 with a closing on May 29. Proceeds of the bonds will be used to refund outstanding commercial paper, new money for the Utoka Pipeline Project and wastewater improvements, and also to reimburse Aquit for a previously approved reimbursement resolution. Thank you.
Okay. All right, then we could take up first item Y. Okay. Which is, yes, I was quickly counting how many of us are in here. Which is the resolution waiving competitive bidding with respect to the letter of credit, et cetera. And we've got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. do it verbally? Okay.
Does it look like we had a motion?
We had a motion in a second, right? You had that recorded?
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2, Ward 3, Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6? Ward 7? Ward 8? Mayor Holt?
Yes, passes unanimously and with the necessary 7 affirmative votes required to waive competitive bidding. Next item is item Z. This is the resolution authorizing the incurrence of indebtedness by the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust. And if we can't do it electronically, we will. All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously, and with the necessary 7 affirmative votes required for approval and 6 affirmative votes required to incur indebtedness. All right. Thank you all. 11AA1 is a resolution authorizing the municipal council to confess judgment without an admission of liability in the case of Hendricks v. City of OKC. Executive session is not requested.
Where's that? Oh, thank you.
Do we need to go verbal again?
Are we going to today? We got through a lot faster than I thought we were going to today.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes.
Computer is doing weird stuff. Yours is? Brad's.
Passes
My fault.
unanimously.
Harder.
Okay, item AB1 is a joint resolution with the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority authorizing the firm Collins, Zorn, and Wagner to represent city employees Dustin Wright and Jesus Hernandez in the case of Jesse Longoria v. City of OKC.
I'd like to move to enter into executive session.
Okay, we have a motion to enter into executive session. That would be AB2. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Fails 3 to 5. We're back on the item. Could take a motion if the system will allow it. All right, we've got a motion and a second. Cast your votes when you can. Passes 5 to 3. Item AC, 1 are claims recommended for denial. We have items A through D. Executive session is not requested. We can take them with one motion. The motion and a second. Cast your votes.
She did this. Yes. She couldn't see your thumb. You did it like this.
Passes unanimously. And finally, item AD1 are claims recommended for approval. Executive session is not requested. We could take items A through C with one motion. I have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. We didn't record Councilman Stone's cipher. How do you wish to vote on that last item? Okay. All right, there we are. Passes unanimously. And we're done with voting, blessedly, just in time. All right, item 12, comments from council, Ward 1.
Thank you, sir. I just want to give a big congratulations and shout out to the Oklahoma City Broncos homeschool baseball team who is about to leave and embark on a road trip to Orlando to represent Oklahoma City in the Baseball World Series. So we just want to wish them a good luck and hope that they bring home the W.
Thank you. Ward 2.
Yes, thank you. First, I wanted to extend my gratitude to Belle Isle West Neighborhood Association for neighborhood meeting we had at Belle Isle Library. Always enjoy seeing those folk. I also wanted to say thanks to any resident who attended our well-attended community meeting regarding the class and corridor tax increment finance district proposal. We held that, of course, at Oklahoma City University, and so I want to thank the university, the Asian district, Councilwoman Hammond for helping to coordinate that event, folk at Economic Alliance and at planning as well, the students who attended too. One of the big takeaways for me from that event, there are actually two things. One is, and I say this as someone who comes from the world of education and academia, I think sometimes we can have a tendency to speak in the language that we know when we're talking to people who aren't familiar with our work and our world. And one of my concerns coming from the Class and Corridor community meeting was that residents seemed very confused, still regarding how TIFs work. They were also confused how what we mean when we say average median income, for instance, when we're talking about affordable housing. They were confused when we use the term affordable housing, what we mean by that term. How subjective is that term versus how can we use data to drive us in understanding what we mean when we say we need affordable housing. Those were stated concerns Tuesday evening. Those were email concerns that our Ward 2 office received. So, I was just listening to one of my mindfulness meditations the other day before I go to bed, and the focus was on criticism and how sometimes we struggle when we receive critiques because we can take them personally versus constructively. And sometimes, of course, someone is being, personal in what they're saying, but the critiques I'm hearing from the residents of Tuesday evening's meeting is how can we as a city of OKC government make clearer what we're trying to communicate to people. So let me be very clear myself right now. One of the things also missing that evening is we're proposing, a tax increment finance district. We missed the opportunity to have literal images of, for instance, successful examples of how the city of OKC has used TIFs previously. So, for instance, the Skirvin, it would have done wonders, I think, for the residents to see an image of the Skirvin before and after. It would have probably done well for them to see how much money we put into the Skirvin. It would have done well, too, for them to see how much money increment, that created for us and how we were then able to invest that increment into maybe the surrounding infrastructure, what was the gap in development, in terms of how much money the developer needed versus where we were able to step in to fill that gap. Again, coming from the world of academia, it can be really easy for me to jump right to the argument and the particulars because I'm so mired in the research that I know it inside and out. But sometimes I forget I'm talking to freshman college students, or to middle school students about sometimes lofty ideas. So I think that was a missed opportunity that we are going to have to, both Ward and 6, I think, kind of have a next steps conversation with people who participated in, again, a very well-attended meeting last Tuesday. We need to bring those folk back to the table and be able to show them examples of where the city has done TIFs, literally visually and with numbers, We're gonna have to do that. And then I think we're also gonna have to show them literally examples of what streetscapes look like in terms of Paseo and 39th Street and anywhere else that we've done them, so that we can kind of help them imagine better what we could be doing on Classen. There's such enthusiasm for that corridor, literally not just the Asian district, but all the way down to Northwest Expressway, from people who live in the area and want to see that become a more pedestrian-friendly corridor with retail from small business and big business. They want both blended in. The main other thing I heard that night, affordable housing. That was the big question. Even my planning commissioner asked that night, what do we mean by affordable housing? Like, that was a question from Janice Powers, who's been doing this work for many years. And that stunned me, that it's possible that planning commissioners would not know average median income, 30% of the HUD number, right? Like what that means to be rent and mortgage burden, and how to calculate that to see what is the actual dollar amount. And that was what was so smart about the community last Tuesday, is when we as a city did not do an effective enough job of walking people through how to determine what is affordable, the residents shot up their hands and like, define it for us. And then they put it very layman's terms. They said, we need to know how much our rent monthly is when it's too much. Like, what is too much? Is there any way to determine that? And there is. And we really missed that opportunity. And in fact, the meeting almost went off the rails. And that's why I'm spending so much time talking about this right now. Is the meeting itself almost became a bit unmanageable, where one hand, two hands, three hands, four hands, five hands of people going, wait, I don't understand what you mean. Wait, I don't understand what you mean. And the reason why people's hands went up like that is because they are feeling that cost burden with their rents. And so their livelihoods are making them anxious in their communications with us. So I don't know if Councilwoman would disagree, but that was my takeaway. So I think we need to be really prepared heading into subsequent TIF meetings about Classen, and making sure that we have examples of TIFs that we've done, Heartland, et cetera, Skirvin, First National, how those increments can go into infrastructure needs. We have to help people imagine what's possible based on our own success stories. And then we got to show them what those streetscapes can look like as well. I pulled up our affordable housing study during this meeting, and I understand the anxiety because according to our own study, 42% of Oklahoma City renters are currently paying more than the 30% of their gross income that they should be paying for utilities and rent. 42% of this city's renters are cost burdened when it comes to how much of their gross income is going to rent. 42%, that is nearly half. And many of them are Ward 2 residents. Many of them are my servers, my baristas, my teachers, my mental health counselors, my case managers. 19% of homeowners are also cost burdened. So I'll just conclude by saying this then, in this moment, for those of us who forget this, and I literally had to turn to Councilwoman Hammond at the meeting, like, am I calculating this right? So it's not like I'm some expert. Sometimes it takes other people, but if the average median income, AMI, is $60,000 in Oklahoma City, and you want to build housing where you're saying that we're gonna build housing so that people who are making 60% of the average median income can afford to live there, then you have to do a simple calculation. And I know some of us at the Horseshoe already know this, but I'm saying this for the recording right now, and for the folk who are in the crowd, but you would take $60,000 and multiply that by 60%. That gets you to around $37,000 annual of what your income would be, which is the starting pay for a teacher in Oklahoma City. That's $6,000 raise that they got from 6 years ago during that teacher walkout. So they're making $37,000. Then you divide that by 12 months to find out how much would that person be making monthly. What are they taking home, right? So once you get to that number, then times that by 30%. That is the HUD definition for how much you should be spending, right? In terms of your housing needs, right? Once you get to that, that's how you get to $900 a month, is the max amount that a person should be, that's the high end of what someone who's making $37,000 a year should be spending on rent or on their mortgage. That means then 42% of our people, nearly half of renters, are at that $900 a month or more. I just need to spell that out because I think sometimes it's really easy for us to go, we're the 20th largest city, we're the 6th fastest growing, our unemployment rate is this low, everything's going well. Two things can be true at once. Things can be going well on the one hand, and then you can have this crisis facing us in terms of people not being able to afford, they're making decisions where they're going, I am now spending over what I have, and now for the next 30 days of the month, I have to figure out how to balance my grocery bill with gas money, with car payment, with insurance, and that's if I'm single with no children. So I appreciate council hearing me go on just a little bit about that because it was palpable, the tension Tuesday night, palpable. You could feel it in that room, people going, what is the city of OKC going to do to help incentivize developers to build the sort of housing that we need? And can you specify for us the actual dollar amount? Which is why I just did that in public right now. And so our follow-up meetings, I know we have the capacity to do this. We've done great presentations before. We just need to be ready to kind of meet people where they are with this information. But yeah, I just wanted to say that. And also to say that, as I said in public 2 weeks ago, what we did with Alley's End, which we approved today, not only do we need to figure out the tax incentive structure through a TIF that would allow for building affordable, attainable housing that's meeting this data, we also need to look at what we did at Alley's End. And we need to bring that to bear because those rents are above this 30%. And so whatever magic formula we figured out with Alley's End, we need to figure out how to bring into this TIF. And quite frankly, this summer, as we are crafting the bond and the community and economic development portion of the bond, we need to be thinking of what worked with Alley's End and what can we be doing to build housing that is very specifically targeted at the people who are making 60% of AMI. These are not lazy layabouts. They are, in fact, people who are working hard and are struggling to get by. So I appreciate your time on that, and I again appreciate everyone who showed up, but it just revealed to me that we have much more educational work to do. So thank you.
Thank you. Ward 3? Ward 5?
Ward 6? Yeah, I think I'll just sort of like second everything Councilperson Cooper just mentioned, particularly thank yous to all the staff that attended. And I know there was a presentation portion, which as Councilperson outlined was a little tough and kind of went in a much different direction than I anticipated, but I think in a good way. I think it did point out where some of those gaps in knowledge are, and to his point about sort of like we kind of get used to our own jargon and our own definitions, and we kind of need to sometimes step out of that and remember that not everyone knows all the same things we do or is interacting with that information to the same degree that we are. But then also I think what I didn't get a chance to sort of step out the latter portion of the meeting. We had attendees break out into different sections, sort of tables with staff to talk about more focus on particular areas of the map, as well as ideas and needs around infrastructure along that corridor where the map overlays. And from what I hear from that portion, there's a lot of good idea generation and just kind of the opportunity to sort of talk with staff about, oh, well, what is currently being funded, what isn't, what needs are on their radar, what isn't, those sorts of things around particularly the infrastructure and the connectivity for safety of people walking and biking and trying to traverse that corridor, particularly outside of a vehicle, but even for people that are driving, knowing that the better we improve conditions for people walking and biking, the safer it really is for all of those road users. So yes, I like I said, I just kind of want to second everything Councilperson said about that, and then just again extend my gratitude to staff for being in attendance and taking that time to speak with folks and help just take a step in that educational process. So thanks.
Thank you. Ward 7.
Yes, I just wanted to re-emphasize yesterday as I talked about Earth Day, just some of those concerns that are happening within parts of our communities and parts of our neighborhoods, especially dealing with environmental concerns, and the fact that for one particular zip code, which is 73111, which is located in Northeast Oklahoma City, the life expectancy is 18 years less. And some of those concerns are because of the environment. When you go further down 4th Street to the area of where we have our recycling plants and we have a couple of other things that exist, you see the increase of asthma, you see the increase of other respiratory types of diseases, and ultimately sometimes, unfortunately, mortality within those same areas. And this is not uncommon to communities of color or more of our communities that have not been served to make that impact that could be done other places. Or, I wouldn't say, the language would say poorer, but I wouldn't say poor, but just with less resources and ability to leave those conditions. So I hope as we continue, and I brought up Adapt OKC intentionally because those are the things that this plan is supposed to help to mitigate as far as our communities are concerned. And looking at, as we talk through the zoning, our code update, how we can create better ways to ensure the protection of our residents within these particular parts of our communities, because we have been dealing with this particular area for many, many years. And unfortunately, there are some things that have been preempted by the state for us to look at how we mitigate those concerns for our residents. But at the same time, we should be lobbying to ensure that we also get those protections to make sure our residents are afforded the health, safety, and welfare that they should have always received due to the protection of not just what we say as a local government, but what our Constitution is supposed to provide. So I wanted to lift that up in the spirit of, again, these are things that are continuously things I think about, even as we look at some of those open well places. We look at some of those working oil wells that are within parts of our city. They're all over the place, not specifically to Northeast Oklahoma City, but in those, again, very vulnerable and underrepresented and under-resourced areas of our community. So I hope we will continue to work through that. And I just wanted to mention, I know myself and Councilwoman Hammond and somebody else, I'm not sure, we've been tagged on social media. So I wanted to lift that up about Mr. Pat's Tire and Auto Shop. And I'm hoping even for him or that tire shop and our businesses, we can get some type of resolve, because we lessen the days of the Arts Festival this year. So I guess my concern is that we still had the same amount of days to prepare for less days. And for our businesses that are within this part of our community, it does harm them in some ways, as he has advocated for and said. And I don't want that to fall on deaf ears as we continue to work through this event. If it's going to be less days, should we still have as many days? to prepare for it and or to make sure it's taken down when it's over. So I hope we can talk through that for next year. I wish you would have someone would have came to to our council meeting when we approved that permit or before, so we could have talked through it to understand what those concerns were, instead of us now hearing it again, because, you know, I know it was brought up before, but you don't remember it again until it happens for some of us, unless we hadn't fixed it already. So I do want to make sure that it is known that I heard that, I read that, and I understand, and hopefully we'll be able to work through it in the future. I wanted to mention we do have a town hall tonight, 6 o'clock. It's going to be at the Community Health Senior Recreation and Wellness Center. If you have not been, it is a beautiful facility. Looking forward to it. And the first topic of discussion is the Lottie bike lanes. So I know a lot of people are excited to hear about it, and some people not so much. But I think it's important for us to all know what's going on and to understand what those concerns are and how our staff is responding to that. Now, I do want to continue to say thank you to them, especially for Max and Justin Henry, for being very responsive to our residents and understanding their concerns about what is taking place on this road. In my last comment, before that, I wanted to say congratulations to Millwood. I know they had a robotics team that went national, as well as a student, Miss Smith, who was the free ride recipient from Channel 5. So congratulations to our young people within our community. I'll close with Friday. I went to the April 19th memorial to hear and commemorate everything that has taken place 29 years ago. And it always takes you back to that time where you were. And listening to the speakers and understanding and hearing, I think it's very important that we use our words and implement what we say, especially if we plan on being repairs of the breach. If we plan on saying that, you know, we should have conversations and we can't even say thank you or good morning when the door is being held for you. So I think it's very important that we look at ourselves in those same lenses that we're telling other people to do. And, you know, I have my faults, I'm responsible for some things, but I think we all have to take that onus on ourselves to understand where we could at least say hello, good morning, or thank you, and walk in the ways that we would want to be with what we're telling others and how they should consider how we operate and be good neighbors to each other. So I'm hoping even on this horseshoe it can get a little better as to how we are respectful of one another.
Thank you, Ward 8.
I wanted to thank the Oklahoma City Metropolitan Association of Realtors. What a great organization. I was able to visit with Carolyn Sims and Gary Jones this morning, and they were quick to point out their policy points that they would like us to consider, and including having a table or a chair at the table on the next bond initiative. They always have great suggestions. They always have great questions. It's a wonderful organization. I really want to thank them for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes comments from council. And now we're at item 13, citizens to be heard. And we have Kenny Shelton.
Good morning. My name is Kenny Shelton. I live at 6421 North College Avenue, Ward 1. Oklahoma has one of the highest poverty rates in the United States and the second highest uninsured rate for its total population. We rank 6th highest overall death rate and consistently have one of the highest rates of pregnancy-related deaths and infant mortality. This state, who has sent billions of dollars to Israel to date, currently has a bill headed to the House floor, Senate Bill 728, in which Oklahomans' hard-earned money will be used to bolster connections with a regime that is currently carrying out a genocide on the Palestinian people. We need to keep money paid by Oklahomans in our state, especially as we face dire issues in housing, education, and healthcare. Prioritizing your constituents in OKC is critical and the only way to ensure Oklahoma City continues to grow and thrive, with all OKC residents benefiting, especially those who need the extra help the most. And as you have heard today and voted unanimously for an emergency shelter and feeding site, that is life or death. As well as Mr. Cooper spoke about the human rights issues taking place in our city jail, that Oklahoma City residents have needs that are not being met. Today, I am asking that when a ceasefire resolution passes to you, you will vote yes, not only for the lives of Palestinians, but the lives and future of Oklahoma City, and to support divestment from supporting a foreign government over the lives of Oklahomans. Thank you.
Thank you. Nadia Rashid.
Hi, my name is Nadia Rashid. I live at 5609 Northwest 111th Street, and I really feel failed by the city council. I have been coming here for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I've been listening to you debate issues like homelessness and the housing crisis, and what I have yet to hear is any one of you express any plans you have to do something about it. I work with homeless people, I work with the severely impoverished. People are suffering and people are dying. I myself make $15,000 a year. I cannot afford to live on my own because despite working full-time, I do not make enough income to afford an apartment. I can barely afford groceries. I can barely afford utilities. Many people, especially my age, are in the same situation as us. And we go to work and we work hard every single day. We break our backs doing hard labor at our jobs so that our taxpayer money can be taken by the city and sent to a foreign government to fund the killing of children. I would much rather I go to my work and work hard so that my taxes can go to taking care of people in my home state who are suffering. I have a friend named Rodney who I'd like to tell you about. Rodney lived a normal life. He had an apartment, he had a car, he had everything. Until one day he had a stroke. He had a stroke and he was taken to the hospital where he caught pneumonia. He was intubated, he was unconscious, and when he woke up, his apartment and all of his belongings were gone. Rodney has been homeless for several months now. He cannot use the entire left side of his body. He cannot write or hold a pencil because he is left-handed. People like this are all over our state. I meet so many people who are disabled, who are homeless, who are starving, who have nowhere to go, and some of you on this very city council have tried to criminalize homelessness like this. There was a bill, I think about a year ago, that one of you introduced that would fine homeless people and imprison them in jail for being in public and sleeping in public and being homeless in public. Why is this happening in our home state? We can come here and we can talk every week about the importance of affordable housing and putting people in homes, but nothing matters if our taxpayer money is not going to actually funding those programs and funding people in Oklahoma that need our help. Our money is going to a foreign government to fund something that none of us even agree with. I feel that you have a responsibility to listen to your constituents when we show up here week after week after week and tell you that we do not support what you are doing with our money, the money that we earn at our jobs. And your job, if you didn't want to listen to your constituents, why did you become a public servant? If you don't want to, none of you are looking at me right now. None of you are paying attention. If you do not care about what your constituents have to say, what made you want to pick this job? What made you want to work in public services? Because it is very clear that none of you actually care.
Thank you. Ronnie Kirk?
Excuse me. My name is Ronnie Kirk. My address is 2328 North Missouri. Back when the pandemic, on 23rd and I-35, where the Claralupa Bridge is, there was a sign that failed, had been down 2 years, laying flat on the ground. We trimmed, when you come off of I-35, the Clara Looper sign up there, you couldn't even see the sign. Coming through the bridge, it was limbs coming through there. So me and a couple of guys from our organization, we cut that up. We made it where you could see that sign. On the south side, Clara Looper Bridge, there was another sign, Oklahoma City Beautiful. It's been laying there 5 years. I took it off the ground yesterday, started painting it, putting it back together. Another thing, during the pandemic, families was all together. Couldn't get out of the house, couldn't go nowhere, sat down and smoke weed every day, got their guns, methamphetamines, and now they can't even stand each other. Families, friends that been friends for many years, they getting into it now today. His family's killing the whole family. Just one last night, just one 3 days ago, about these guns, all the marijuana you can smoke, taking methamphetamines. Our people, marijuana is a depressant. If they drinking with it, it makes them mind just be different. Everybody got some type of mental disability. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes citizens to be heard, and that brings us to item 14.
We like to get Clara Looper Bridge painted.
Okay.
It ain't been painted since Mr. Keaton was in office 24 years ago. Never been painted.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. We are adjourned.